They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
I'm your number one fan.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
God, it knows I'm here.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
You're listening to the Slasher Sports Show with Billy Graves.
Once again, thank you for tuning into Slasher Sports Cinema. He is the author and narrator of The Warning Woods, a horror podcast. Welcome to the show, Miles Tritle.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Hey, thank you very much for taking your time out of the day. Did I say that last name right? Tritle?
Yep, that's it.
Nailed it. I love nailing it the first time. Yeah, well, I want to thank you very much for taking your time to come and hang out with me a little while. And first of all, let me talk about this ridiculous flick that released in '88. But first, I mean, listen, I listened to your Halloween special. It was called The Exorcism of Ridgeville.
That's right.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You got a good voice for narration.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the things I'll get compliments on. And, that's just not anything that I thought. I'm primarily a writer. So it's really just something I'm fortunate to have on the side, I guess, is the voice to then narrate the stories.
It's just a bonus, I guess, to go along with it all. That's good, though. I mean, I've been told I have a face for radio, so that's always good to hear from people because it sounds genuine. It sounds like a real compliment. But where do your ideas come from, man?
Anywhere. I have. Everybody's got their phone in their pocket, and so anytime I'm walking around and something pops in, I might see. Well, here's an example. In my neighborhood recently, somebody left a stroller next to a trailhead that goes down into the woods. And it's been there for days. It's still there. I went around looking, there's, a baby stroller and there's nothing in it. It's empty. It's just sitting there in the woods. And, little things like that.
You kind of hope the baby learned to walk or something.
I guess.
Because what happened there?
There's a story there. And, I might not know what the true story is, but I'll make one up eventually. And that'll make its way into the podcast. So, I'll see things throughout the day, or I'll be sitting watching TV and something will just come into my head. And you always got to vet those ideas and make sure they didn't come from a movie you watched 3 months ago or something like that. But
sure.
I'll write them all down in my phone.
I guess there's always going to be that fear. Where did I get this idea? Did I see it on an episode of American Horror Story or something? And yeah, that's a very good point. And almost kind of dissuades me from writing more because hey, what if I get about halfway into this and somebody hits me up, they're reading it for me on the side. They're saying, hey, did you take this from Misery back in '91? Well, I guess I did. Yeah,
that happened to me just recently. I went and saw Smile, and a week later I started writing a story, and without even thinking about it, I was writing the plot of Smile into one of my own stories and realized as I was writing it, I got to back this up. This is too relatable to the recent movie.
Well, don't worry about that because even Smile took a little something from It Follows, did it not?
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think that was one of the bigger complaints that I heard before I even saw the film. That, they just ripped off It Follows. And, they took elements, which there's not an original thought out there.
No, people have been doing this for way too long.
Yeah, all ideas are exhausted now. You kind of have to just. Well, we didn't have a clown in it last time, so let's add a clown and It Follows, and maybe we've got something. Yeah, you just kind of have to add different variables and hope the story kind of shakes out.
Yeah, I like to explore the human elements, so I might have an idea that might not be the most original, but I'll ask myself, what would happen if a type A person rather than a type B person was in this same scenario? How would they react? And that can sometimes mix it up and give you some different results too.
Very good. Very good. So the Exorcism of Ridgeville, did that end? Because I actually got to chapter 4.
Yeah, so part 5 came out on Halloween. So that's wrapped
And that
up.
was the
You got
finale.
conclusion there. That's it. Yep. Part 5 ends there. So yeah, that's something I'll do once a year. Well, I've done it twice now, so hopefully I continue to do it once a year. On Halloween, I'll have a big 5-part episode. It's kind of a serial show that'll span 5 days leading up to Halloween and end on October 31st each year. And then the rest of the year, I'm putting out one story a week on Fridays.
But I kind of like that. I cut my teeth on the podcast. Well, it was called Serial. The one about, it was a true crime podcast about a kid over in Maryland who may or may not have murdered his girlfriend and went to jail for a very long time. Was actually just recently released from prison, acquitted of the crime after I don't even know how many years it's been. It was in the early 2000s that he went. So it was like in the neighborhood of 20 years that he's been in prison. And they suddenly say that he didn't do it. But that podcast was episodic. And well, they're all episodic, but I mean, it was a saga, so to speak, and not like a new subject every week. And even though that's what, I do here, I enjoy more something that is a saga, kind of like you did with, actually you do it with more than just your Halloween special. They're usually in separate parts. Yeah.
The Halloween special is in 5 parts. Yeah. The other stories they'll usually be their own thing. Unless I'm promoting a book, because I also have a couple novels. So I'll release a prologue or a chapter or something like that. I just recently put out the audiobook for my most recent novel, Mr. Secrets. So that's where, the novels is kind of where I'll get more into the chapters and releasing little bits at a time. But the Halloween special is usually where I have a longer story.
And you narrated all of this, the audiobook as well?
Yep,
Yeah,
I did the audiobook. Yeah, I self-publish those, including the audiobook. So I do all that myself, start to finish, which is exhausting.
I'm sure it is. Of course it is. But good on you for that. I mean, you, like I said, you definitely have a voice for narration. It's a pleasant voice. It's not overpowering. Anytime I listen to an audiobook, and it's pretty often, I do look for what's different about this voice. Is it something I can listen to for an extended amount of time? And I was just talking to Chris D'Italia. He's a narration guy. He's a voiceover actor, actually, in
cool.
New Jersey. And we were having the conversation, like, man, why do they keep casting these non-voice actors in voice acting roles? Like, I believe the subject came up of Super Mario Brothers, the new flick. You've got Chris Pratt in the role of Mario.
Controversial cast.
A little bit. But you got Jack Black as Bowser, and I can live with that. I like Jack
Absolutely.
Black. Big fan of his. But once you get past the starring roles with Mario and Bowser, it doesn't really matter who you cast. Like, nobody's showing up to Super Mario Bros. At the theater to hear Anya Taylor-Joy.
Right.
Nobody. She doesn't even have enough of a distinct voice for me to say, you know what I'm going to see? I'm going to see Princess Peach, because Anya Taylor-Joy's in this film. And she was great in... what was that flick that she did about the chess player?
Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit. Fantastic film, but there's nothing about her that says I'm going to go watch because of a voice role, right?
Right.
So you would think that you would say, hey, we've got this union of actors. Let's take care of our voice actors who are up and coming and get those guys into the film. It's going to be a huge film because, first of all, if you don't already want to go see Super Mario Bros. And get your head checked, but Chris Pratt's a big name, whether you like him or not. Jack Black's fantastic, universally loved, I think. But damn it, well, why not take care of your voice actors? I don't know, but I guess I want to know, what is your writing process like? Is it just like, I had an idea, I need to put this down before it's out of mind? Or is it more like a scheduled amount of time where you go into your creative space? Or is it maybe somewhere in between?
It's kind of all of that. So like I said, I got my phone on me. So anytime I have the idea, I make sure I capture that, and I can hold on to that for when I always write early in the morning. I'll get up before I've got a kid. So before she gets up, I'll wake up and start writing. I always sit down, usually with the idea ready to go, and I'll just start writing for an hour or two, whatever I get from there. Then I'll go back over it. You know, it usually takes me 2 or 3 days to finish a whole story, then go back over it, polish it up, edit it, catch all the times that I put plot holes and things, or forgot that, you know, I wrote that a door was locked and then later somebody gets in through it, you know, things like that you just don't catch in the moment. So I'll clean it up that way. And then I'll usually, as I'm recording the podcast, as I'm narrating it, I'm doing little tiny tweaks and changes to some of the wording and stuff like that, just to really polish it up. So a whole episode will, you know, the writing alone will usually take 4 days, probably 8 hours total. And from idea to finished product, it really is just taking whatever idea came into my head and fleshing that out, building the characters in there, until I've got something that's worth putting out.
I can dig that. Is writing kind of a cathartic thing to you, or is it just something that you do for fun? Because I was talking to an author recently, and he talked about writing. Actually, he's a horror writer as well, but writing as a catharsis. And when I think about that, if I'm writing based on mood, well, once I get all that frustration out, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to continue to write with the same quality? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You know, it depends on how you approach the story, I think, because sometimes I will have that theme kind of works its way into the story where I'm in a certain mood and that just kind of builds itself in. Then other days I wake up and maybe I'm just tired. That's when I'll focus on the characters and I'll try to put myself in their headspace to try to wrap my head around their mood, what they've got going on. If my own mind isn't supplying those finer details of emotion and thought, I try to imagine what somebody different from me, somebody who's got a different life experience in a different setting, how they would react. And that's kind of how I work through that. And, you know, I do have fun with it. It's not something I approach like a chore. It kind of came about because you see the guitars behind me. I'm a music guy, and that's kind of how I spent all my time growing up, was playing guitar. And then I had a kid, and you can't really crank up an amp every day like I could when I was a teenager and do that. So I found writing as a quiet way to get that creative energy out. And then that's just built into what it is now. So I approach it the same way I would a hobby, of just, it's a way for me to be expressive and have a creative outlet. And I'm just fortunate that I have an outlet like podcasting where I can actually share it with people and generate an audience from it, because I didn't have a hope of that in music.
Oh, well, listen, it's a good thing you're doing it in 2022 and not in 1992, because you'd be using a typewriter and the baby would never sleep.
Right.
Never sleep.
Yeah.
You'd probably rather have the guitar plugged in.
Yeah.
But how do you balance, your writing, your hobbies with a job and a kid? I mean, how do you balance fatherhood and all this you've got going on?
So, you know, I mentioned getting up early. I wake up same time every day. It's usually between 5 and 5:30, depending on if I beat my alarm. And then I'll get straight into work. I'll grab a cup of coffee and just sit down to start writing. Or if I've got a finished story, that's when I'll record too, is during that same block of time. Usually a little bit after that, my kid will wake up and I'll kind of get into the parent mode. I'm fortunate that my job lets me work from home most days. I'm here almost all the time. So there's no commute. Some days I don't even really have to get dressed. I can kind of switch right from one role into the next without a break. I can be around and be a parent while I'm also doing my day job. And once that's over, I'm already home. So I just transition right into, you know, being a husband and a father. If I'm lucky and my kid goes down early, I might get another hour or so of work at the end of the day. But in order to wake up early, I'm also going to bed fairly early. And, you know, in order to have fun, I really got to rely on the weekends, because I book myself during the weekdays from morning until I go to bed. with some form of work. It's hard to call it work with podcasting though, because I do enjoy it.
Oh, no doubt. So let's jump into the actual meat and potatoes of what we're doing. I mean, there are more subgenres of horror now, and sometimes it gets overly complicated. But my question is like, what makes something scary to you? What makes it worthy of being written down and saying, hey, this is my work?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think some people might consider something scary to be like the gore or your James Wan jump scares. I think my brand of horror relies a lot more on suspense and atmosphere. Putting out a horror story that's just full of surprises, I think is going to get old pretty quickly. I think people are going to come to expect the unexpected in a way that does not benefit your stories. So I'll really try to build up a story, build up a setting, and then try to maybe add a twist or something like that. I tend to lean more towards the paranormal because you can do things with paranormal that are harder to do with other subgenres of horror, where you're not really bound to the rules of nature. You can kind of make up your own little twists and turns as you go.
Sure.
But actually I really try to mix it up with my stories so that my listeners never really know what to expect. So I do have things that are just a slasher story here and there, maybe a serial killer. I have one coming out tomorrow that's really different from what I normally do. That's more of a psychological sort of thriller where the narrator, the main character, thinks one thing is going on, and that's not at all what's happening. It's not revealed until the end. So, I do try to mix it up to keep my audience interested, but I do really rely on suspense. I think that's the key to making something really scary, is to kind of have that lingering feeling of uncertainty.
Sure. And like we said before, it does feel like there's not an original thought out there. And, having just watched Smile and, before, we could even review it, there's, complaints about how it follows, and with just different settings, right? How do you avoid those horror tropes in your writing?
I don't know if I do all the time. So I want to be careful how much I, say that I do avoid them, because there's probably somebody that's going to listen to the podcast after this and go, "Oh, he's just following all the same tropes." But I try to be aware. I do try to watch a good amount of horror, read a good amount of horror to see what's out there and make sure I'm not stepping on something that's already been done. And that awareness helps, because what it does is I'll catch myself building up to something that's, like I mentioned, that story where I realized I was copying Smile. Well, that then gives me the opportunity to go back, take the same characters in the same setting, and do a turn towards something that's different. And sometimes that'll help me break out of that pattern that's in my head that's been put there by somebody else and their idea that I'm just following along with, and try to branch into something that's my own. So that's basically the only way I found to avoid that, is just awareness.
Well, before we jump into today's topic, being the John Carpenter film They Live, tell everybody where they can find you on your social medias. If you're even active on social media. I'm starting to draw away from it, honestly, but put that out there.
Yeah. Well, I did just delete my TikTok, but I'm still on Instagram at The Warning Woods. You can find me there. I got some personal pages that are locked down just for friends and family, but that's where I post all the podcast stuff. Mainly I'm on Instagram. So if you go there, you can find, I've got a LINKTREE in the bio where you can find the podcast on all the different platforms. I'm on all the major ones. I'm on YouTube. That audience is starting to build. I got my show on there about 6 months ago, so that's starting to gain some traction. But yeah, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I use Overcast. Wherever you usually listen to podcasts, it's called The Warning Woods.
The Warning Woods. So speaking of horror tropes that have been done and done over, one that hasn't really been overly done, especially at the time it was released on this day, November 3rd, back in 1988. It's the John Carpenter film They Live. Had you seen this one before we met up?
I had not, and I was surprised when it started up and I saw John Carpenter's name. I kind of smacked myself, like, how did I miss this one?
It's great when you find something like that you didn't see before. It was a really long time before I saw his film Vampires.
Oh yeah,
I had never seen that one. I was big. I mean, listen, Carpenter is one of my like Mount Rushmore guys. Like The Thing is probably my favorite outside of Friday the 13th Part 2 in all of the horror genre.
Yeah.
Then you've got Big Trouble in Little China, Halloween, obviously Halloween. But yeah, John Carpenter wrote and directed this one, known for Halloween, The Thing, Escape from New York and LA, Big Trouble in Little China. Don't even need to keep going. Do you have a favorite Carpenter film?
I'd probably say The Thing for me as well. Halloween might be a second, but The Thing is just a class. I mean, the score, everything about that one is perfect.
Perfect cast, perfect score, perfect story, perfect practical effects. I love it all, man. Love it all. The Thing is just nearly the perfect horror film.
Yeah.
My favorite horror film of all time is Friday the 13th Part 2, and that's where you kind of spider web into all my other horror interests. It just depends on what what you got into from there.
Sure.
But this one stars Rowdy Roddy Piper. He's listed as Nada in the credits, but he never actually says his name in this film. They call him Nada in the credits because that's the guy's name in the short story. But yeah, listen, Rowdy Roddy Piper was a unique cat. R.I.P. Rowdy Roddy Piper. But he was a unique cat, and if you didn't really follow pro wrestling back in the early 90s, late 80s, hell, even mid 80s, he was you may not have been born at that time. I say not you yet. As in the listening audience. But Rowdy Roddy Piper was one of those guys that was not a big guy. He looks jacked in this film. Like he's, if I'm shoveling dirt like he is, and I look like he does, my shirt's going to be off too.
He had a shredded six pack while he was sitting down. That takes some muscle.
He did, and you see him standing next to like Keith David. You see him standing next to the rest of the cast, and he looks absolutely jacked. But in the wrestling ring, he's one of the smaller guys. There are very few times where he's going to be the bigger guy in the ring. But where he really made his money was on the microphone. And he didn't have honey in his voice like you do, Miles. Okay, he does not. But Rowdy Roddy Piper could like talk the people into the stadiums, and he was like one of the biggest, if not the biggest bad guy in wrestling at one point. He's one of the biggest. You put him on Mount Rushmore with the guys like Ric Flair and things like that. But Roddy Piper on the mic was golden. And, he came up from some pretty humble upbringings. And he even mentioned, some scenes in this film that were difficult to film, or at least difficult to watch being filmed, because it kind of hit home, being homeless at one point. And he's just a really special guy. And did you know anything about him coming into this film?
I didn't, no.
So he had some of the biggest matches. I mean, he headlined WrestleMania 1. Okay, I think even if you're not a wrestling fan, you know what WrestleMania is. It's just the big event from WWE, which was WWF at the time. But he headlined WrestleMania 1 in a tag match against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, of all people. But he'd been around for that amount of time and actually quit wrestling, quit the WWF to be in this film.
No
Vince
kidding.
McMahon, Vince McMahon, the owner, president, whatever of WWF, didn't want him to do it. He's like, don't do that film. We're going to find you something else that's going to pay similar or whatever. No, he's like, no, go to hell. I'm going to do this film. And he did this film with John Carpenter. Who tells you not to go do a film with John Carpenter?
Yeah,
who advises against that?
Move. No.
No, it's John Carpenter. Your name's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And WWF Films wanted to do their thing for so long. I don't know how they didn't latch onto this.
Right.
But Keith David is also in this film, not David Keith. Okay, I get those guys mixed up so much, and that's on me. It's just like when I get the Cult and the Cure mixed up.
Oh, all the time. I do the same thing. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one, man. I love the Cult and I can't stand the Cure, but I still get the names mixed up. The Cult's great. But, Carpenter actually wrote this role of Frank specifically for Keith David after he did such a good job in The Thing.
Uh-huh.
And, I just love Keith David. Like, anytime I see him show up in a film, I'm just automatically happy. It's automatic serotonin.
Yeah, it's like a warm blanket.
He is a warm blanket of an actor, Miles, is what he is. And, you think about The Thing. He went right from The Thing into Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, okay, as a handyman. How do you go from The Thing to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
As Keith David. That's the only way.
That's the only way. He played like a handyman or a maintenance guy or something. But yeah, that's my favorite Keith David fact. But he was in There's Something About Mary. He's the Frank and Beans guy. Pulls the zipper up and it just gruesome scene. I would rather watch The Thing 100 times over than see that scene even one more time.
That's fair.
But he's sitting on about 350 acting credits to this day.
Wow.
So to try and pinpoint a handful would just be a waste of breath. Complete waste of breath.
I had no idea he had that many.
They kind of sneak up on you. You don't realize how often you see people in films until you look at somebody's resume, like Danny Trejo. At one point, he'd done more films in 1 year than anybody. It was like 100 films in 1 year. And whether they were like bigger roles or just small cameos, they're going to get the bag.
Sure.
They are going to get the bag.
Yeah.
And you have to really, respect that hustle, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You'll see Danny Trejo standing in the background and you kind of have to, is that actually him there?
With a red Solo cup, no lines, but he's
Right.
going to get paid for this role. So the tagline for They Live is, in every neighborhood, there's one house that adults whisper about. No, that's not right. It's, I copied like 3 taglines here. No, that was from Halloween. The one I'm thinking about is, I'm here to.
Oh boy. I know this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chew bubble gum and kick ass.
And he's all out of what? All out of bubble gum.
Oh yeah. He had some nice ones in there.
Listen, this is why I brought up the fact that Roddy Piper was so good on the mic in wrestling.
Yeah.
Because he ad-libbed a lot of these lines. He had a lot of them written down. I don't want to say ad-libbed. He had them written down for wrestling promos and he shared them with Carpenter. And Carpenter's like, yeah, let's use that one. So that is a Piper written line.
That is amazing.
And yeah, I love it. But yeah, we're talking about They Live, okay? And you talk about tropes. Roddy Piper, he's wandering into town. He's that wandering loner on a lonely road. He's down on his luck.
Somehow eating enough protein to maintain however big his biceps were.
Absolutely jacked physique. Hair is perfectly feathered.
Oh, yeah.
He is not a vagrant whatsoever, but he's a little standoffish to everybody he meets, as you have to be when you're a wandering loner. And he's a people watcher. Okay, you don't have to be a loner to do that, because that's like one of the more fun things to do in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Sit on a park bench and wonder how many cheerleaders that guy's got in his basement, right? But, he's more observant than the average guy. He sees through what others are eating up, right? Just off of Jump Street. What's your initial take on the Roddy Piper character? Nada.
I loved how the score kind of added extra, meat to his character, for lack of a better term. It gave him that outlaw vibe that was already there, but that extra little, that twangy kind of outlaw score it added so much. And I, whenever I see a character like that, I get excited. It all of a sudden it seems fun to wander into a city like that, and you don't know where you're going or what you're gonna do. And I think that's just, it's a little bit of a trope, but it's something that I think everybody wants a little bit of in their life. Just a little
No
bit of
doubt.
mystery. Yeah.
Yeah, a little something that we don't know about this guy. There's more than meets the eye. Why do we know that? Because he's got entrance music.
Oh yeah. Outlaw entrance music.
Outlaw entrance music. And when I think about that loner coming into town, I always think about the series, The Incredible Hulk, with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. And like it's a saddened song when he's got his little knapsack on his shoulder, thumbing a ride. But no, this guy gets the John Wayne welcome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, he's got attitude.
Oh, he's got a huge attitude. But we meet I guess we meet the foreman for his knowing that what we know about the film. Just knowing what we know about the film.
Yeah.
Carpenter's putting his commentary on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, his social commentary. And the first thing he points out is apparently his thought on unions.
Yeah.
Because Piper strolls up to the potential job site where he meets the foreman here, and he asks for a job. Foreman tells him, well, it's a union job. Piper looks around and sees like the guy slacking, huddled up, laughing. Like he doesn't beat this one into the ground, but like he gets his jab in, right?
It's there. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, he doesn't like unions. But we meet Keith David very soon after that. He happens to he's sweating, he's working on, I don't know if he's got a jackhammer, I can't remember what he's got, but he looks over at Piper, who's seemingly shoveling dirt for no reason. It doesn't look like there's any type of task he's on.
No.
He's just digging that shovel into the dirt for no good reason.
Glistening under the sun.
Yeah, he is glistening under the sun. He was as brown as a biscuit. Miles. He was as brown as, but that comes from wrestling.
Oh yeah.
That comes from pro wrestling. He was fresh out of WrestleMania 3 when this film happened, and like they all go to the tanning bed.
Jack and tan.
Look under his arms. Oh yeah, man. You look under his arms. There's going to be a big white spot where his armpit is, where the tanning bed was. But yeah, like I said, we meet Keith David. And I can't help but be just ecstatic that he's on screen. I guess this movie just subconsciously makes me happy because so many different things in my worlds kind of came together. I was a big wrestling fan as a kid. I love The Thing already. And there's Keith. I almost did it. I almost said David Keith. David Keith is another actor, very talented actor, not a horror actor at all. But where would you remember David Keith? Major League 2. He was so it's part 2 of Major League, the baseball film, right?
Okay.
And he's a player on the Indians, the Cleveland Indians, and he's an asshole to everybody.
Gotcha.
He's the guy who nobody wants him on the team, and he ends up getting traded to another contender, and he's just like the worst guy. Jack Parkman is his name.
All right.
But yeah, Keith David just subconsciously makes me happy here. So he kind of hooks up with Nada, and he says, hey, if you need a place to stay, there's a community just down the way. That's where I'm going. And it looks like there's some people that are down on their luck. It's just a community for people taking care of each other, but that they don't have anything except each other.
Right.
But there are random sofas out in the open. Yeah. So it must never rain there.
Guess not.
That's the first thing I think about in Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Here in Tennessee, if you don't like the weather, just, wait 2 days and it's going to be different. Right.
It's the same here in Iowa. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always heard that about Iowa. And you've got 4 seasons. A lot of places don't have 4 seasons.
We have 4 seasons that you can have all 4 of within one season some years.
Oh, that is just bananas.
It just turns right on a dime. Yeah.
And it feels like it turns, it alternates summer, fall, winter, right around the September, October timeframe. And that's right now.
Yeah.
But these people are sitting outside on like apparent sofas that are just out in the elements, and they've got a TV. I don't know where the hell they're running the current to, but they've got like a floor model TV that they're all watching. And there's like a hacker almost like that takes over the TV station. And he's talking about the annihilation of consciousness, racial relations, civil rights are down the drain. And he says something that they are safe as long as they are not discovered. You know, something that's going to be very important later on in the film.
Yep.
But we're being bred for slavery, and then the shut off, to shut off the signal at the source. Like, what's he mean by that, right? But these are all things that are going to foreshadow the story, right?
Right.
And there's just like a really mysterious scene that kind of just dropped in with no foreshadowing at all. Everybody's having a great time. They're eating dinner, talking about baseball. But then the scene happens out of nowhere. What would you say that sounds a lot like the conspiracy theorists of today, though?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And even the reaction to him cutting in on the broadcast, everyone, nobody stopped him and went, what is he talking about? They're like, this idiot, he's interrupting our broadcast. They didn't. He listened to him at all. He just sounded like a nut job.
And we do that.
Mm-hmm.
We absolutely do that. We ignore all conspiracy theorists and just they're all nut jobs.
Yeah.
Until 6 months later when their conspiracies turned out to be true.
Yep.
Well, some of them anyway. But it's not like enough of them. It only takes a handful. But it's not like everybody at the community settlement is like ignoring everything, because they are sitting around talking about it. But it's almost like there's one guy in the circle who nobody takes seriously. And he's not even serious about it himself that much. But like, Miles, go ahead and call him out. Who's your biggest conspiracy theory friend? We all have one.
Oh boy. It might be me in my group of friends. I think I'm that guy. I like to entertain any idea.
If you don't have one, you're the guy, right?
I think so. because I'm usually the guy that starts saying something, and I got all my friends sending me links and articles and stuff. I'm like, okay. I'll back down.
Wait,
this time.
have I gone overboard with this? What's your favorite conspiracy theory?
My favorite? Well, should we stick to the ones that haven't been proven true yet?
This is a safe space.
Okay.
Listen, if you remember one that turned out to be true, then sure.
Well, you got your classic MK Ultra type stuff. My favorite ongoing conspiracy? Oh man, there's got to be one. There's all the talk about the UFO stuff. There's always a fun conspiracy around that. Yeah. Why is the Pentagon talking about this now? What do they want us to know, and what do they not still want us to know? Actually, if we were to pick one that I absolutely wanted uncovered right now, it's JFK though. I think.
See, that's
release the documents
though.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, there's a 0% chance that it's not a conspiracy. People
agree.
Conspired outside of this lone gunman, right?
Yeah.
There's
absolutely
zero chance.
Yeah.
And there's also zero chance that the government is being 100% up and up with us.
Well,
they're not.
What's in those documents that they keep pushing back?
Right. So listen, you've got a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 kids. Like, I've been in charge of their lives, and they are the most important people to me in the world. Yeah. I 1000% have lied to them. You take the leaders of a nation, put them over millions and millions and millions of people, and you're going to tell me that everything they've told us has been just copacetic?
Well,
absolutely not.
They know they're not only talking to the top 1% of intelligence. It's got to be messaging that's for everybody. And when you're doing that, the kid example is perfect. You got to talk down to the kids and protect them.
Well, the worst thing to happen to a conspiracy theorist, though, is to find out one of their conspiracies was true, right? And then everything just becomes a conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
You take like that nut job Alex Jones,
Mm-hmm.
When you think of conspiracy theorists, you think of this guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem was he has found so many things that turned out to be correct.
Yeah. Like I
So
said,
many.
enough, it just takes a few, and then
And
you're
that's the
doubting
thing, though.
everything.
It's not even a few. It's like the majority, the vast majority that comes from him is correct in
Mhm.
some way or another. He said that there was pollution in the water that was turning the frogs gay, and
That's a
people
classic, yeah.
It's a classic one, right? And like people use that as ammunition until they used it as ammunition either until they found out that that is partially true. It wasn't
Mhm.
turning the frogs gay. It was basically turning them into either changed their gender or gave them
Yeah.
both,
It was like
turned them into
hermaphroditic kind of thing.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I know the word hermaphrodite, but I didn't know the state of being. And I
Well, I
didn't
hope I
want
said it right.
well, listen, if you didn't, you're in some shit now. But listen, that is a true conspiracy that people laughed at him about,
Yeah.
and it
Or
turned out to
Bohemian
be
Grove
true.
is the other big one.
Bohemian Grove is
There's
the one
video
that
of
did
it.
him in. This is the one
Yeah.
that did him in, Miles.
Yeah.
Because like he's out in the woods, he's infiltrated this group, and he's like, "Listen, we've got it on good authority that these guys are talking to the top CEO members." And listen, you go out in the woods, you find a big freaking owl, and then a burning effigy. They
Yeah.
thought that they were burning a real body.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks like it in the video. Have you seen the video? It
Yeah.
totally could be that. Yeah.
Yeah, it could totally look like a dead body. But then, you have the things where he really screwed up on.
Yep.
And, the Sandy
He's
Hook
facing the
thing.
music for that now. Yeah.
Facing the music for it right now. But, back when Sandy Hook was fresh and nobody cared what you put on YouTube,
Mhm.
there were multiple videos from people that were not that had nothing to do with Alex Jones,
Sure.
who were using like plenty of false flag videos to illustrate the very same point.
Mhm.
And there's the video of the dad who's like laughing before he realizes he has to be on camera, and then he gets the stoic face and starts saying, "I miss my child," or whatever it was he was saying.
Right.
Like Alex Jones has been saying for a long time that he was wrong, like a very long time, and then
Mhm.
but he was very wrong.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
was like one of the worst tragedies that we've ever had in this country. And no matter if you explicitly told somebody, "Hey, go mess with these people because they're lying," like that's how January 6th happened.
Right.
And like you don't have to explicitly tell somebody to do something. If they understand you to mean it, they're
Yeah.
gonna do it. And they can
Yeah.
just
If
point at
everything
you.
else you've said up until that point has put the ideas in their head that, we're going to have a revolution, we're going to change the world today, it doesn't take a lot to push that over the edge.
Does that mean go
Right.
attack everything at the Capitol building? I think it does. Well, let's go.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
did we
Let's
just
find
become
out.
best friends, and do we want to go out in the garage and do karate?
Right.
Conversation, right? And just, yep, let's go
Yep.
do it.
Yeah.
But not in this film, he really uncovers the fact that there's something going on at the church. Okay, there's a
Mhm.
church across the way from the encampment, and he just doesn't know what. The community leader, he's acting fishy. So Nada heads to the church. He finds the church choir is no church choir at all, Miles.
No, sir. No, sir.
It's a recording of a choir that's supposed to be masking the volume of the secret conversations. And this is kind of like a red herring.
Mhm.
I don't know if it fully classifies as a red herring, but it makes you think that there's something up with the camp leader. I guess spokesman. He
Yeah.
isn't really leading anybody. But it makes you think he's the bad guy and he's behind some of this stuff. But whatever Nada finds, it only raises more questions, but provides no answers. But what happens next is something we've seen numerous times before the film and numerous times after the film. Police raid the encampment, destroying all the possessions, belongings of the community. Those who were in the church, they're catching the police beat down.
Yeah.
When I watch this scene, I can't help but think about maybe a little bit before your time, but the LA riots.
Sure.
And the disaster at Mount Carmel in Waco, Texas,
Mhm.
with David Koresh. Totally unavoidable stuff. And then sadly, more recently, the George Floyd protests that were peaceful until the government got involved. Right. So I know we're talking about a silly horror flick, and I don't want this to be a heavy conversation.
Sure.
But those things have to come into mind when you see this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was my first thought when they started coming through the bulldozers is this feels like something that could happen tomorrow, tonight,
Yeah.
It feels too real.
I mean, the bulldozers really did it because like we're not just here to see what we can get done. We're not just here to see what we can destroy. Like we're here to destroy it all.
Yeah, decimation. That's it.
You had very little. You're going to have even less when we're done with you. Yep. And all it took was you poking your nose around where you didn't belong. And I feel like that translates to real life. Yep. A lot of movie posters for the film, they featured this long blurb that read, "You see them on the street, you watch them on TV, you might even vote for one this fall. You think they're people like you? You're wrong. Dead wrong." Long blurb, so relevant, is it not?
Oh, it could be something that you saw tonight on TV about the election next week.
We've seen crazier things.
Yeah.
Since 2020,
Sure.
And like, I'm coming from a guy who's not a political person. I do lean one way, as most people do. I lean one way. But I'm not a political person.
Yeah.
When I see this stuff coming from both sides, it's like, gosh, you guys don't know how jacked up all you are.
Right.
And the division you think is caused by the other side 100% of the time. And that is irreparable to your environment, your communities, your entire country. Right.
Yeah.
But, when Nada goes back to the church, which had basically been gutted at this point, he finds his box that had been stashed. Now, I don't remember. Did he stash this box or did he just find it?
I was trying to think of that too, because he went directly to it back there.
Right to it. Just knew where to punch the wall out, right?
Yeah. So I don't remember specifically if he put it there or not, but he found it pretty quick.
I tell myself that when I do these reviews with people, I want to be point A to point B and give a genuine reaction. I did not want to rewind it and find out if I missed something. So we're just, for the sake of argument, we're going to say he stashed it there his first time around.
Makes sense.
But what's in the box? Just a bunch of gas station sunglasses, right? Little $5 sunglasses you're going to find on the rack at the gas station. But no, these are not just any old sunglasses, Miles. These are the iconic sunglasses. When Nada puts these glasses on, he sees almost what seems to be a different world. A world where billboards have hidden messages. Without the glasses, it might be a supermodel or a business. But with the glasses on, he sees little simple messages like obey or stay asleep or watch TV. Right?
Nice shirt.
Thank you. And on the currency, it says, "This is your God." Right? I mean, do these messages have real world significance?
You already mentioned John Carpenter putting his thoughts into, his opinions into these movies. And I think you're really seeing it come through in there. And one that I think resonates with a lot of people, particularly working class people, like the characters in this movie. They have those, they feel like those messages are there, whether they're seeing them or not. They're being told, obey, stay asleep. And money is absolutely, seems like it's the God.
And when they try to poke around and figure out what's going on, decimation, right?
That's it. Yep.
Last week, I talked about not last week, this very week, I talked about a film from Wes Craven. I don't often talk about films from huge directors, like the iconic directors.
Sure.
It just happened to be that they were celebrating their release anniversaries, right?
Yeah.
We talked about The People Under the Stairs with a couple of good friends of mine. And I don't know if you've seen that one. It might be worth a revisit.
I'd have to revisit it. Yeah. It's been a long time.
Same message, except it's a battle between the haves and the have-nots, classism, racism, and things like that. But like two 2 episodes in a row, basically, where these are heavy subjects, and we want to keep it lighthearted, and we can definitely do that because this is a fun film
Oh
at
yeah.
face value. At face value, it is the funnest film. But something I love about the cinematography in They Live, it's how Carpenter thought it through and said, how's the viewer going to know when Nada is seeing the real world and when he's seeing the real world?
Right.
And it was simple. When he's wearing the sunglasses, the film changes to a black and white filter.
Mm-hmm.
When the glasses are off, the film's in color. So simple.
Yeah.
So simple. But doing it that way means we require no additional exposition. Like, almost like in The Predator, when the Predator sees an infrared, or not infrared, like the thermal vision.
Right.
But like, as the viewer, there's immediate recognition when Nada's seeing in reality and when he's seeing the hidden world, I guess.
Right.
You don't even have to think about it. It's immediate. But I kind of went into it a little bit before, but there's a lot of Roddy Piper in Nada. And like having so many Roddy Piper wrestling promos and interviews, like in the back of my mind, I almost feel like he was improvising a lot of these lines.
Oh yeah.
What's the one that he told the old lady in the store? Something.
Oh, he called her. I was trying to remember this one because it was so good and so funny.
Something about your face fell in something.
Man.
Looks like your face fell in the cheese dip back in 58 or something like that.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous.
I don't think John Carpenter writes that line. I think that
I've never heard a line like that in another Carpenter movie. I've never heard that come up.
No, of course not. I mean, he wants to get deep. Like, was that the boogeyman? Well, as a matter of fact, I believe it was.
Right.
What I'm going to do after we finish here, I'm going to send you like some of Roddy Piper's best promos, and I want you to look me in the face and tell me he wasn't the best on the mic. I think he wrote a lot of this film.
I'd believe it.
Oh yeah, but again, it sounds like such a Roddy Piper line. I mean, he wasn't a big guy, but in the film he looks jacked. That's next to a bunch of actors, next to other wrestlers. He was often the smallest guy in the ring, like I said, and he wasn't even that great a technical wrestler. Okay, like his style in the ring was like a brawler. He made his money on the mic, legendary trash talker. And I think if you were to poll wrestling fans and ask who the best talkers were in the history of pro wrestling, he's making the top 10 list on like the vast majority. And like not just scripted, like he could go off the cuff with anybody.
Nice.
He went on politically. What was the Bill Maher show? Politically Incorrect.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So he went blow for blow with a guy who made a career out of being a soundbite guy.
Oh boy.
Right. And
as much as
it is, man, it is. And he got like hot with it, basically this is during a time when maybe it felt like gotcha journalism.
Yeah.
And he wanted to bring 4 pro wrestlers onto the show, and 3 of them were very outspoken. One of them stayed quiet because he was like getting pretty upset about the whole thing, right? But at the end of the day, Piper stands up. He's like, look, man, you want to call it fake, call it what you want, but he pulls his pants down.
Oh boy.
He's wearing underwear. But he shows him like a scar. He's like, I got a plastic hip, I got a broken wrist, and Owen Hart just fell from the ceiling and died. So don't tell me it's fake. You can go tell Mrs. Hart that wrestling's fake and see what happens. Yeah. And then later on, Mars like, well, hey, I'm not pulling my pants down in front of other men. So, but go ahead. And Piper's like, yeah, well, how'd you get the job? And there was no air in the conversation. That's what makes a good comeback, is the air in the conversation not being there, right?
Yeah, just quick.
But shooting from the hip, and like he was just perfect with it. But he basically made Bill Maher move the goalposts. But listen, we have to talk about this fight scene.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hold thoughts. I want you to tell me how you felt about this fight scene.
Well, minutes 1 through, I mean, how long was it? It's funny because it starts out and it's like your classic 80s fight scene where you're like, I don't buy this. And then it just keeps going and going. And, at first I kind of thought this is a little ridiculous, but it also felt more like what a real street fight would actually turn out as when you don't have, somebody that like a John Wick type that just ends it real quick. You got two guys just brawling it out in the street, and you don't really know what their goal is in the end. Like, are they trying to kill each other, knock each other out? How does this end? And for a long time, it just doesn't. It just keeps going. And I loved every second of it, because it goes from a fight scene to almost like a comedy, but you're still waiting for the outcome. You know what I mean?
This has to be the greatest fight scene like my eyes have ever seen, Miles.
Yeah.
And I don't say this lightly, okay? I mean, like the greatest fight scene ever happened in They Live. And what makes it great is how just when you think it's over, they start right back up again.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
like
they're panting and laying there.
Yeah, just and they get right back after it. Like finishing blow basically becomes transitional strike.
Yeah. Yeah.
One man tries to walk away, he gets tackled from behind, gets thrown into a dumpster. And again, I've got to give credit to Roddy Piper on this. They have a choreographed scene between he and Keith David here. And they basically put this thing together without much scripting at all.
Wow.
Like, this was between them. They wanted it to look like a legit fight.
Mm-hmm.
And there were wrestling moves performed, multiple traumas to the groin of both men.
Oh, yeah.
And like all because Keith David wouldn't put on the glasses.
Uh-huh.
This is the greatest fight scene ever, man. And
yeah,
even if all you do, guys, is Google the fight scene, go to YouTube, put They Live fight scene, and
I think I saw it as longest fight scene ever. There was a video on YouTube titled that, and it was the fight scene from They Live. God, I don't know if that's factually true, but it feels like it could be.
Well, listen, the number of times that you think it's over and they start right back up is astounding. You think that, okay, they're about to shake hands, but no, like he reaches out to shake his hand, twists his arm, knees him in the face, and he thinks he's done it now. It's the best thing ever, man. But Nada finally gets the glasses on Frank, and now he has an ally where before he had none. But there's something to be said about the fight scene past the hilarity of the stops and starts and the wrestling moves and the traumas to the groin. It was basically brother against brother, and it was incited by those powers that be, those same powers who are seeking out dominion. Two guys who are friends are fighting each other. It's probably more telling that it's a black guy against a white guy. So just like today, one might think that they're keeping up a racial war when there's really a divide between the haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
What say you?
I agree. Yeah, I got that same thing where you had this sort of manipulation. It wasn't direct. There was no actual hands moving them. There was no one telling them to do this, but it didn't matter. They were still going at it, and it was all over this power that one of them didn't believe in and the other one did.
It's almost like a chess game, right?
Yeah.
Where you can move the piece if you're the power that is. You can move the piece, but you infer that the fight is happening between the two chess pieces.
That's a great example.
They're putting the pieces in place, and the fighting gets done because they think it's the way.
Yeah.
And I've seen multiple people. I can't really point at anybody as like credentialed or anything like that, but they say that, they've got us out here fighting a race war while they're winning a class war.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see. And like partially, I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But Nada and Frank finally get some support and team up with the folks from the community. So they weren't bad guys after all, right? They were just, they were hip to it before Nada was hip to it. But it's basically become martial law out on the streets. This is probably an allegory. There may be some who believe that just when we're united, the man's going to find a way to divide us. And that happens when the police force, breaches and clears them out, basically kills everybody from the community. Right.
Yep.
And furthermore, they've dubbed this group of rebels an underground terrorist network. So it's kind of funny how that happens, right? Because a lot of times somebody starts to make some headway and they get labeled an enemy of the state. You can almost say that happened with, and again, I do not want to get political, but I mean, just think about Ed Snowden having to seek asylum in one of the worst, most strictest, countries in the world. And like all because he was a whistleblower on some atrocities. Yeah. And he should be, lauded a hero, and he's having to live in hiding, right?
Well, real recently, there's a group I'm aware of that all they do is teach preparedness, and they got put on an FBI terrorist watch list. And the guy who runs it is a vet. I mean, he's I want to say Army Special Forces, and by all accounts, a great dude. But they've decided they're a terrorist group.
Art imitates life, does it not? Well, this film concludes with Nada having found the source of the signal, but he's stopped momentarily by, I think her name is Holly. His human female counterpart. They had a meeting earlier in the film. Don't want to go too much into it because we do want you to watch this film if you haven't already. But this is where the spoilers are happening, so may as well stay. Listen, if you haven't seen this film since 1988, it's probably on you that is getting spoiled now. But she double-crossed him once again because, of course, there's always a subset of the population who are going to go along no matter how bad things are, and how much you lift the veil, they'll be blind to it and trust the people in charge. And while this film, taken at face value, is such a fun watch, it really is. Maybe the best film ever led by a pro wrestler, in my opinion. Yeah. And I do enjoy the Rock's movies. I enjoy what he does. They're mindless action flicks. You got to love that, right? Yeah. Nobody's going to judge me for liking slasher flicks, right? Those are mindless too. Hell. But, it's full of 80s cheesiness, but it is sad to know that this is a wildly embellished version of real world problems. Consumerism is a huge problem. Social media does want every second that you're awake. And
imagine this movie with social media. I hadn't thought about that.
Sign me up for a remake, a reboot, whatever you got to do. I'm down with it. But that top 1% of the population you were pointing at earlier, they want the bottom 99% to be in servitude. Yep. So Miles, tell me your final thoughts on this film.
Final thoughts, it was something that from the beginning I felt like was a deeper movie than what you got at face value. And while it's a little campy and a little corny, it still hit real hard. Those deeper meanings and messages. Still extremely relevant today, maybe even more so, as we do have the internet now and we become more aware of the conspiracies and things like that are true and real. It's like 1984 where those things just keep coming true and you keep seeing the little things that creep in and go, man, is this fiction or not?
I couldn't have said it any better than that, Miles. Could not have said it any better. Well, do you have any messages to leave with the listeners before we dip out of here?
Yeah, I just encourage anybody, if you're into horror fiction, check out my podcast, The Warning Woods, or, my books. I've got one called The Collins House and one called Mr. Secrets that just came out. They're both horror novels. If that's your thing, check it out. I'm on Instagram at The Warning Woods, and that's it.
Of course, they're into it. That's why everybody's here. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
This has been a very fun chat, Miles. I do appreciate your time coming on. You could be doing a lot of things on a Thursday night. I mean, you got the kid probably over there blowing snot bubbles waiting for you to get back. So I'm going to
spinning on the walls.
Yeah. Hey. So I'm going to let you get back to that, but I do want to thank you very much for your time.